Before we start this panel, I think what we've decided up here, because of in the interest of time and everybody else's schedules, so you'll know basically where we're headed. Maybe it'll help you know where you're headed. Some of you are here from out of town. Given the fact that we have this panel and only one other panel after this on the schedule today, I think we're planning to do is just power through this to the end, not have a lunch break, and just power through it and go on through this panel, the next panel, and then the hearing would be concluded. So having said that, we move usually from this area this way to this way, and so is it Rakers?
It's Rackers.
Rackers. I have the same problem with buttery and buttery, so anyway.
In the old country, I think it was Rockers, but
Rockers,
here in
okay.
America, we call it Rackers.
Anyway, Dennis, you may proceed.
Okay. Thank you. Good morning, Vice Chairman Buttrey and Commissioner Mulvey. I want to join and ask you to extend sympathy from Dairyland Power Cooperative to Chairman Nottingham and his family in the untimely loss of his brother. My name is Dennis Rackers, and for the last 6 years I've been Director of Procurement for Dairyland Power Cooperative in La Crosse, Wisconsin. I'm responsible for Dairyland's procurement and transportation of coal to its 3 coal-fired plants in western Wisconsin. My career began in the 70s, and I've been involved in coal mining and power generation for over 30 years. I'm here today on behalf of 575,000 people that Dairyland serves in Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, and Illinois. We thank you for the opportunity to tell our rail story and to participate in this hearing. Dairyland was formed in 1961 as a non-profit cooperative to provide wholesale power to the area shown here on this map. And our mission is, next, to provide competitively priced energy and services to our customers and maximum value to our owners consistent with the wise use of resources. The electric industry is essentially comprised of 3 different business models: investor-owned utilities, public and municipal-owned utilities, and member-owned electric cooperatives. All are experiencing similar problems with service and rates for rail transportation of coal. Railroad personnel sometimes impugn the profit motive of the investor-owned utilities, but all 3 business models provide power to customers at rates that are directly related to the cost of that power. Despite the attention devoted to it, deregulated electric service has not advanced far in this country. The investor-owned utilities have to pay a return to their stockholders, but the state public service commissions are very effective at regulating that return. I recognize also that the railroads have to provide a satisfactory return to their owners, and I certainly don't begrudge them that. The new rail pricing, however, the so-called Renaissance rates, are diverging widely from the cost of underlying rail movement, and the rates have lost nexus with the cost of that service. But respectfully, it is your responsibility to regulate the railroads and protect the electric customers that they serve. Those electric customers are ultimately you and I and all the other families that pay the monthly electric bill. In addition to the size of the monthly electric bill, your decisions have a profound effect on the price of power and its broad impact on the nation's economy and competitiveness. Next, you already know that 80% of the nation's coal moves to its destinations by rail, and that more than 50% of our electricity is generated with coal. The Energy Information Administration expects coal's share of generation to increase to 57% in 2030, despite the concerns about climate change. More than 90% of Dairyland's power is produced with coal in its 3 electric generating plants. Dairyland uses 3.2 million tons annually, and about 2.3 million tons of that is low sulfur coal from the Powder River Basin. Dairyland is one of the smallest, or the smaller shippers of PRB coal, and is probably the smallest electric generator in the room today. Our Genoa and Alma plants were designed to burn Illinois coal, but for years they have blended PRB coal and bituminous coals to reduce sulfur dioxide emissions. Our Magid plant is the only one that uses PRB coal exclusively. Next. All of our coal starts its journey on rail, and about half of it moves the entire 1,227 miles to the Magid plant in Dairyland's rail cars on BNSF's northern corridor. Next slide. The other half of the 3.2 million tons is delivered by barge to the Alma and Genoa plants. In recent years, this half has been sourced from low sulfur western mines and has moved on the Union Pacific to East St. Louis, where it transloads to barges. Half of the barge coal, or 1/4 of our total, travels 1,061 miles from the Powder River Basin in Wyoming, and the other half is bituminous coal that travels 1,364 miles from Utah. Next. Here we see the BNSF corridor that travels from Powder River Basin to Magit. Next is the Union Pacific route from the PRB to East St. Louis, and then lastly, the UP route from Utah to East St. Louis. And the last thing we see is the barge movement, 500 miles to Genoa and 80 more miles to Alma. The upper Mississippi River is open to barge traffic only 7.5 months of the year. Next slide. At about 40% of the total, fuel is far and away our largest expense. Breaking it down further, transportation takes 71 cents of each dollar spent on fuel, while the mine takes 29 cents of that dollar. The railroad duopolists take much more from the coal than do the miners. Under the new Renaissance pricing, all but the closest plants pay much more for PRB coal than for the coal itself. Next. This graph has been prepared by Jamie Heller, a noted industry consultant that has addressed the commission before, to depict new rail rates to competitively serve destinations. Too close. To depict rail rates to competitively serve destinations. Is it better back here? At the left side of the graph, the Burlington Northern Railroad was the only carrier in the Powder River Basin, and it was able to extract monopoly rates for PRB freight. Note the 18.7 mils per ton mile rate in 1983. But the Interstate Commerce Commission realized that another origin carrier was important to promoting cost-effective utilization of the region's tremendous low-sulfur coal reserves. In the mid-'80s, it ordered BNSF to sell a 50% interest in its PRB track to the Chicago Northwestern Railroad, and thus the joint line was born. The C&W partnered and subsequently merged with the Union Pacific to become a viable competitor to the BN. As the UP and BN competed for market share in the next decade, they realized cost decreases through productivity improvements. Competitive rates dropped to as low as 7.3 mils per ton mile in 1993. In the next decade, railroad revenues increased as coal volume grew sharply, and profits increased as productivity improvements drove costs down. During this period of active competition, both railroads grew and improved their financial standing. Then early in the current decade, BNSF realized that demand for PRB coal was about to outstrip the combined railroad capacity to ship it. In early 2003, it announced ambitious plans to increase rates with its 90068 tariff, but the UP initially wasn't convinced that it would work. In response to the BNSF announcement, UP said that it tries to increase rates roughly 1% every year, although it fell slightly short of that goal in 2002. A year later, however, UP saw the light and announced its similar Circular 111 tariff in March 2004. Both railroads realized that they would have to stop competition with the other if they were to achieve their dreams of dominance in rail pricing. They drove a stake into the heart of competition, and it died at that time in late '03 or early '04. Since then, it's been a great time to be a railroad. Shipper experience suggests that the Western carriers have clearly allocated the existing markets and customers between themselves. Now, as contracts expire, even competitively served shippers struggle to get the other carrier to submit a proposal. If the non-incumbent railroad does submit a proposal, its rate is even higher than the staggering increase demanded by the incumbent railroad. Heller's work puts rates at 17 mils in 2006, but others report rates in the 19 and 20 mil range in private conversation. It is indeed a great time to be a railroad. Next. Dairyland's experience with its Western rail rates since 2001 is shown here overlain with the same Heller data. These green bars on the right represent the average of Dairyland's 3 Western coal rates. If you look closely, you will see a small decrease in the average rate in 2003. This coincided with the start of our new 3-year contracts. These contracts with the Western carriers expired at the end of 2005, and our rates jumped 93% on January 1, 2006. As a result, Dairyland's wholesale rates increased 20%, and the end-use customer pays about $11 more each month on its bill. Only one of these movements is ostensibly competitive because the coal travels to the Mississippi River and both carriers provide that service. The rate for this so-called competitive movement lies between the other 2 rates as measured in mills per ton mile. When asked to submit a proposal in 2005, the non-incumbent carrier said it did not have the locomotives necessary to move this